In South Africa, Minister for Women Affairs, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma of the African National Congress has drawn criticism once more after she skipped the meeting to vote on former public protector advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane's appointment as public protector. Now, this is not the first time Nkosazana Zuma has defied the party's instructions late last year after the damaging investigation into the theft of foreign currency from the Pala Pala farm was released. She didn't follow her party's line and voted against President Cyril Ramaphosa. Well, according to reports, Dlamini Zuma will soon appear before the ANC's National Disciplinary Committee. The minister is still facing another hearing for voting in favor of an impeachment process against President Cyril Ramaphosa last year. Well, Professor Seepe, a political analyst, joins me now from Johannesburg in Gauteng, South Africa, to unpack this latest development. Professor Seepe, thank you very much for your time. The African National Congress wants to take one of its key members to its before its disciplinary committee at a very crucial time when the 2024 election campaigns are just around the corner. And we know that Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma has a huge KwaZulu-Natal following. Is this the right thing for the ANC to do at this time?
I think there are three ways of looking at it. The first one is that this is an act of desperation by the ANC. You have a leadership that is facing a social and economic crisis. You have a high unemployment rate. You have load shedding. You have business that express its lack of confidence in Ramaphosa. And you have the ANC that is faced with social unrest almost every day. People are protesting against this government. So this is more an act of diversion from those pressing issues, because whatever will be done to Nkosazana Zuma does not address the challenges that the people face. That the party that has always told us that it's a party of liberation and that it is also a leader in society has abandoned the society. So these are all internal squabbles that are being given attention as a way of diverting from the obvious failures. The second issue is that the people who are calling for this are themselves upstarts who are trying to make a name for themselves. People like Nkosazana Zuma are strong people who've been in the ANC. They are tried and tested. And if you listen to their argument is that the ANC must walk the talk. If you talk about the transparency, the first person to lead the motion of transparency must be the president. So the president cannot talk about wanting to deal with corruption, with money laundering, and fraud. And yet, when such is put before his doorstep, then he wants the party to protect him. We must also understand that the former president, Thabo Mbeki, has also thrown his weight behind this matter of Pala, that you cannot have a party whose existence is to defend an individual. And what Nkosazana Zuma is doing is simply to say, Mr. President and the ANC, you talked about renewal, you talked about transparency, you talked about debates, and yet what you have decided to do is simply to throw or force us into positions that have not been thoroughly and properly debated within the ANC.
Very interesting. We all know this is not the first time Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma is towing this line. What message do you think she's trying to send to the ANC?
Well, I think the first message that she wants to send to the ANC is that of hypocrisy. Here you have state organs. We've been talking about this state capture. And when the president was accused of having been involved in matters that undermine the laws of this country in terms of the Reserve Bank, in terms of SARS, in terms of the police, and the matter was taken to Parliament, and a committee was set up comprising of a former Chief Justice and a senior judge who was retired and a senior counsel, and they've all come with the conclusion that on all those things that the president is accused of, he's been found to be guilty. And the president then decided to hide behind what you call due process. And that due process was simply to say, let's wait for the law enforcement agencies to make pronouncement. But those law enforcement agencies are headed by people that he has appointed, people who are careerists, who are more concerned about the careers. And what we've seen is that the state apparatus have actually failed people of South Africa. They've come up with different and contradictory and embarrassingly so contradictory reports. And that is what Nkosazana Zuma is saying, is that you cannot have a president who talks about state capture. And yet what we see here is a clearest form of state capture where the president of the country, none of the state organs are willing to touch him. Instead, they come up with the most embarrassing findings. As I said, they're also even contradictory. So that is a position that she says. And when she took a position in parliament, she said, as a dedicated member of the ANC. So when she goes there to the disciplinary committee, she's going to expose all this to say the ANC arrives at decisions after a discussion. We do not have things being thrown at us and being told too much without respecting the notion of democracy.
Critics are claiming that the President Ramaphosa is getting rid of everyone who is not on his side. The latest being the public protector advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane, and we've seen some of the ANC old members like Asa Mahashule, Zweli Mkhize, and others who are not in his camp being sidelined. What do you think is at play as far as Ramaphosa and his actions are concerned?
Well, you could say the statement that says those that the gods want to destroy, they first make mad. This is where the status of the ANC is. It's simply made of things that borders on insanity. But the fact that Ramaphosa is seen to be removing or destroying his opponents is something that you can expect from people who are unsure about themselves, who are almost suspicious, who don't think that they have a real control of their party. So that's the first thing, that when people doubt themselves, that's how they behave, they become paranoid. But the second, we must also understand that people in power do not want their power to be threatened. But what we've seen with Ramaphosa is that he is seen as a Trojan horse that has been brought in to destroy the ANC. And he's actually doing a good job with these people who many people say have been bought, that the elections in the ANC have been more about money. And Ramaphosa has been bought, people call him a prepaid president here, bought by the private sector, the very same private sector that controls mainstream media, the very same private sector that controls the so-called NGOs. This is why all of them have become suddenly silent. So he's actually doing what his masters had wanted him to do, to simply say, at the end of the day, this ANC, when you step down, it should be in tatters. And we can see now what is happening within the ANC, that it's a party that can only be caught up in a storm of insanity.
Quite interesting. We'll keep an eye on that one. Professor, thank you so much for your time. Professor Seepe joined us live from Johannesburg, South Africa.
You're welcome.